Paige, here's our lesson for Monday the 18th, and we know going into this that you've been hitting the ball real well. You're really getting the hit down concept, really grasping that. Definitely able to hit the ball first and then the ground. So you're getting a higher ball flight with the irons. Last time you played, you hit a few greens, played real well. So definitely coming along real well with that. And this is a kind of our before swing. And one of the things you had asked me about at this particular lesson was, how do you hit those woods and the longer clubs, your hybrid and the 5-wood off the ground? Um, and that gets a little tougher than, say, an 8-iron, simply because the length of the club. Um, as the club gets longer, it just becomes a little more unwieldy, but we still want to try to accomplish the same things even with a wood or a hybrid. The idea is that we want to hit down from the inside and try to take a little divot even in front of the ball. Definitely get the club to scuff the ground. And like we talked about, the construction of those clubs um, doesn't really let the leading edge dig into the ground very much. So really you can hit down as much as you want to as long as you're on plane. We kind of talked about that. We'll look at the down the line view for the plane there. But one thing we wanted to take a look at, and I drew this green line up from just in front of the ball, and that's going to reveal itself here in just a minute. We said that maybe the stance, was a little wide. If we use red uh, lines here, just kind of come up out of the feet, we're pretty significantly outside the shoulders here. So, we're working with the wood here and trying to hit down on that. So, some of the things we may alter in an effort to kind of get a feel going to make a really good athletic swing here. So we definitely want the feet to be uh, under to slightly outside the shoulders so that we have a little bit of that A-frame so we can keep what weight does shift in the swing kind of on the insides of the legs, kind of bracing against the inside of the right leg in the backswing, and then being able to move into the left side. Um, and then we talked to, I'll take those lines away, so just to kind of illustrate, if we then, again, if we take this foot and move it halfway over, maybe put the top of the foot right here outside the shoulder, and then maybe take this foot and just move it in just a little bit. We'd be in a little bit better position. And the reason that we don't want the stance to get too wide is that it makes it difficult to kind of move into our left side. It's not so difficult to stay centered if we have the wider stance, but moving into the left side can be a little tougher here. So, we'll take this swing to the top. And one thing we wanted to talk about was kind of having the head be a little steadier in our swing. And that'll help us with all the clubs, but particularly, with the longer clubs, we want to be able to keep that swing center as steady and stable as possible. So here we see, as we go to the top of the swing right here, just where we start to move back into the left side, really good wind up there. A little bit off of the ball though, because if we put the red circle back, you can see how much up and to the right, to our right, away from the target we've moved here. And so we have to work really hard to move back to center to get back to the ball here. And we'll see that we do a good job of that. As a matter of fact, we'll just put the red circle back. And, athletically, you're able to get back to that centered position and, in fact, move to where if we define the swing center as where our collarbones come together, you got that nicely in front of the ball with your leftward weight shift there. And then you're able to, in this particular shot, really strike the ball with the 5-wood. Get that ball jumping up in the air. It's blurry, but I can see the ball kind of jumping up right here. So that downward strike with all the clubs is what's going to make it climb up in the air, because we get it a little bit higher on the face. Not high on the face, but higher than the leading edge, certainly. More in the middle of the face, and that lets the club's loft do the work. And we get that ball to jump up there. And just a really good job of moving into the left side and moving through the shot here. But for consistency's sake, what we want to be able to do, I'm going to take the lines away and go back to address. And we'll take the club to the top. And you can see how we really leaned over and kind of shifted into the right leg there. So there we are at the top just before we start down. And we'll use the circle and draw that over your head here at the top. We'll change colors and go to the yellow circle here, and then when we get down to impact, we'll see how far the head moves to get to impact. And again, you were able to successfully reestablish your centered position as you got into this ball really well, because you're very athletic and you're very able to do that. From a consistency standpoint, uh, you know, if one time we're not quite able to move the head and the center back there, then we'd hit maybe a little bit behind the ball. Or if we know we're going to hit, the brain kind of knows we're going to hit the ball and we flick at the club a little bit with the hands, catch the ball a little thin, get that low hooky ball flight. Or we may even shift too far forward, too far towards the target. So what we want to do is try to stay as centered as we can, but stay as athletic as we can, so that we can maximize the consistency of the strike, allow us to hit the ground in the same place all the time. And then, that's only going to add some power because of the stability that'll be involved there. But really a good swing here nonetheless, for a lot of reasons, and not the least of which is that you just really hit the heck out of that ball there. So we said then the takeaway from this lesson would be, let's just try to get back to where we stay a little more centered, still going with the downward strike idea, kind of down from the inside, the hands work inside, swing back out more towards the second baseman. So if we only look at that in this particular picture, this is the after swing here. We'll go ahead and take that to the top. And much more centered there. Less move away from the ball with the head here. And then as we swing down, we get less move towards the ball, but still that good shift with the lower body into the left side. And we hit this ball pretty well too. Right there, getting that ball to jump up in the air. We stay down through it and get through it. So if we take that circle away and then take the swing to the top and say, okay, this was our head position at the top just before we started moving down with the red circle. And then as we move down, here was our head position right at impact with the yellow circle. You can see that those, like the Olympic rings, those circles are connected there. So, our head didn't move very much at all. But even then, using the same point of reference, this kind of point where our collarbones comes together, we'll use a line instead of a circle to illustrate that. Kind of use a green line coming down right out of there. And it got back right over the golf ball pretty much. So if we assume that the bottom of the swing will be somewhere around that point, we got the bottom of the swing right there just behind the golf ball, which is about as far back as we'd want the ground to impact. So we definitely caught ball first there. So good. And that's just going to allow us to, again, the consistency of contact, the ability to strike the ground in the same place, and kind of get through the shot even more efficiently. But really good swing overall here. And you can just really tell from your setup, one thing that we talked about, as we kind of tilt the shoulders back this way, then the hands go more forward. That's probably a little more forward than we want to have them. So where we talked about having the shoulders be a little more level here to where we're almost stood up a little straight. So if we say that, this is kind of how we look here, then ideally we'd want to have this shoulder over here a little more level. There's still going to be some tilt, and then we would have a little more of this look where we're, the word is stacked. We would be kind of stacked on top of ourselves, a little more like a tower instead of kind of leaning over that way. And that'll let us stay centered. And when we do that, you can imagine, these hands would kind of be coming back more here, and the club shaft would be a little less lean forward. Still have a little forward lean, but that's not a complete showstopper there. So again, little narrower stance slightly, and then level these shoulders out a little bit more at address, and that'll allow you to be more on top of the ball. So if we look at it from down the line, just like we said, this is just a real athletic and confident looking address position. Just the way you've been striking the ball. Just a lot more, like I said, just a lot more confident looking, and like you're just really focusing on striking the golf ball rather than thinking about making a golf swing. And um, you know, there's a big difference there. You're playing golf rather than playing golf swing, and it's showing up on the course when you play. So here's our, you know, shaft plane line here, and we talked about this. Club going back a lot closer to the shaft plane, a little under the plane, but a lot closer to that plane. Going back here with a really good shoulder turn. And one thing that I'd say, and this is something that we can look at the next time, we looked at the shaft, and the shaft is here, this green line at the top of the swing. And one thing just to be aware of, we're trying to get a little more on top of the ball, and we want it to be steeper because, as you pointed out, typically as we would swing down to a position, about here in the swing, I'll use the green line again, we would have the club kind of over in here somewhere, right? So we knew that that was a little under the plane, and that was just really making it hard for us to hit down on the golf ball. So, we've gone, not necessarily to the other extreme, but we've gone away from that, and now the club is a little more vertical, and that's allowing us to hit down onto the ball. Right here, the hands and the club shaft are under this top plane line, so that's fine. All right, that's about as steep as we'd want to be. We wouldn't want to be any steeper, but there's impact just prior to impact right here. We'll call that impact where the ball's jumping up. But just right in here, the club shaft and the hands are, well under that top red line. And if I go back to address, we'll see in just about 95% of the best ball strikers, the shaft, the plane of the strike, if you will, kind of gets on this green line that goes through the elbow, the right elbow. So you can see our green line coming up from the ball going through the right elbow. And that's, when you hit the golf ball, pardon the camera work, but when you hit the golf ball, bang, right there, the club is kind of right up, the plane of the club is right up that right elbow. And so that's really pretty good. We wouldn't want it any higher than that. And, Ben Hogan and Sergio, will use a yellow line. Theirs would match more of the original shaft plane line, but you don't have to do that. Again, most good golfers that hit the ball well, the club comes back to a plane that's a little bit higher, and that's fine. So a really good swing here again. Hitting the golf ball, getting through it, and finishing the swing. Just a lot different than when we started, and you're seeing those results on the golf course. So again, the idea being, how centered can we stay? If that means that we have to favor the left side a little bit, in the backswing, maybe feel like a little increase of weight, not necessarily mass shifting to the left, but just feeling like there's a little more pressure in the left. If that's the feeling we have to have, that's fine. But as steady as we can keep the upper swing center throughout the swing, till just post-impact, the better. This guy's a real good example of that. Here's a really nice turn where the head stays fairly centered. There's still some movement there. We can't keep it just stock still like a statue, because then we rob ourselves of our just, human athletic ability here. But this is a really good example. He shifts into his left side. The head goes slightly forward of where it was. And as he swings down into the shot, the head just kind of stays in that circle. Sure, there's some movement because, the body's moving slightly, but he's just doing as good a job as he can of staying centered, and that just allows him to strike down on the ball where he's got this uh, hands ahead look here, and the club shaft is leaning forward slightly, pretty good amount here, as he hits the golf ball. So that helps ensure a downward strike and ball first contact. And then kind of gets through there, and the head's pretty much still there, and he comes up through the shot. So we'll keep working on those things, trying to make it a little bit better. But what you've been experiencing, what you've been focused on is good. Just try to stay centered. Just, maintain your athleticism and use it to your advantage. And we'll keep what we call tightening the tolerances, just make the swing a little bit better so it can be a little bit more consistent. So we'll get some more distance out of the driver, start hitting a little higher even, and really be able to play some good attacking golf and make some scores.